What are you up to now?
Dude, so currently I'm just chilling here in Providence, Rhode Island, and yeah, I'm just like, you know, truth be told, I'm not worried about money or anything like that, and
Yeah.
I'm healthy. That did it. So like now I'm just like, how can I get to like the next level of like, entrepreneurship or art or philosophy, blah blah blah. And like I've even used this chance for me to like kind of get like more swole, like
Yeah,
yeah.
I
I mean,
noticed you've been working on a personal project on your physique. I'm not sure. I didn't really comb
yeah.
through it too much, but
Mhm.
that was very interesting to see,
Well,
documenting your progress.
would you find that interesting about that, Stephen?
I just it was very different because and we're gonna talk about this.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I admire about the way you work,
Mm,
and that's really not being tethered to a lot of expectations of what people think street photographers are supposed to be doing. So I love that you push the boundary of what's in the realm of street photography, what's acceptable of a street photographer in today's
mm,
world.
mm.
And one of the things that I saw was, portraits and self-portraits of you and the progression of how your body is changing. I don't know if you want to talk to a little bit about what inspired that little shift, and
Mm.
where that's going.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. And it's Stephen, right? Not Stephen.
Stephen, yeah.
Stephen. All right. Steve, like Steve Curry, right?
Exactly.
All right. So cool. All right. So that's a great question. I really appreciate that. So this is my thought. I was always think like so. I was always thinking to myself, how can a photographer, artist, street photographer, anybody become more courageous, less risk averse, to become more of themselves, like more epic. And and also my part time hobby is that I like to read a lot of philosophy. And
Mm,
so I was thinking, like if you're shooting photography or street photography, it's like very physical. Like you got to run, you got to squat, you got to jump up and down, and
right.
good hip mobility is quite key. And I was just thinking to myself, like how come all these photographers are so obsessed about photographing other people? Why are photographers not allowed to photograph themselves?
Right.
And that was such an interesting notion to me too. Because like I'll give you an example. Did you watch a new MJ documentary?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Isn't that fire or what?
Phenomenal, man. I mean, I
Yo, I
didn't grow up
loved
in
it.
that era, but it was
Yeah.
really nice to
How do you, Steven?
30.
Okay, so I'm just like 2 years older than you. I'm
Yeah.
32. So yeah, I mean, like MJ is a little bit before our time, but we know the legend, right?
Right.
And so I was just thinking to myself, I was watching the documentary and I was thinking about this. I was like, how come you got all these like, fat nerds essentially photographing all the greats, and the greats, they just kind of do their thing. And then also, I've always, the root of all this is, kind of growing up as a fat kid and also like kind of being this like Asian kid, like, skinny fat Asian kid, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And I kind of was always interested in my body, but traditional Christian morality or even American ethics, like, you're not allowed to do that. And so
Hmm.
for a long time, I started photographing Cindy, but there's times that Cindy don't always want to be photographed. Yo, what's up, Nico? Um, and so I was like, and I just had this small epiphany. I'm like, yo, the best person to photograph is yourself because you cannot deny yourself.
Mm.
And so that kind of sparked off the great idea is that like, why are photographers allowed to photograph other people, but they're not allowed to photograph themselves?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I completely agree with you. I think the act of self-portraiture is a real in-depth analysis of. I think when you get to the point where you start taking self-portraits, you've arrived at a place where you're considering, what it's like to photograph other people, what it's like to be in other people's faces, and then
Mm,
you turn the camera on yourself and you think, what if I put myself in that under that same scrutiny? What will I find? What questions will I ask? What answers are possible? Because I mean, I think for a lot of people, street photography is about discovering who you are as a person, and
mm,
also
mm,
discovering the larger topic of what life is about, and you
mm,
get this through that dance and interaction with people you photograph. So I think a smart photographer, a smart street
mm,
photographer, is always, um, you know, you're always a smart street photographer when you can turn the the camera on yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, okay, this is what this is one thing I learned from teaching my workshops too. Is that like, okay, so one of the big workshops they teach is like, conquering your fears of shooting street photography.
Mm.
And the interesting epiphany I actually discovered was most people actually don't have a fear of shooting street photography. It's more of a moralistical, ethical issue they have. Is that like
Mm.
most photographers and street photographers, this is so ironic, right? They themselves don't like to be photographed.
Yes.
So when they try to go out and shoot other people, they feel bad about it because they don't like, it's the whole like don't do unto others as you don't want others to do unto you kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like me, I'm like totally a camera whore, right? So like I like it when people photograph me. And so I was like, yo, if I'm in a situation where, people are like, oh, Eric Kim, you're such an asshole, blah, blah. Have you seen the video I did with Kai Wong in Hong Kong? The
No.
digital rev thing? Yo, check it out. Digital
Okay,
rev,
we'll
Eric
do.
Kim, Hong Kong, right? So essentially, people are like, yo, how would you feel if someone took a photo of you without your permission? I'm like, yo, I would not mind at all. If anything, I would consider a privilege.
Right.
And now it's tricky with the ethics because, obviously not everyone wants to be photographed.
Mm-hmm.
But me, I don't mind being photographed. And therefore, when I go out and shoot, my conscience is clean. You piss off some people and stuff like that. That's part of the game. But I'm like, yo, can you even like live through life without pissing nobody off? It's like, I actually had more anxiety when I used to work my 9 to 5 job, and I fuck up the Excel spreadsheet than I did, shooting street photography.
Uh-huh. That's a good point. That's a good point. Before we continue, where can people follow your work? Because I like that. I like when people can follow along with the person's work that we're talking to, so that way the things you're saying makes a lot more sense contextually.
All right, you just gotta Google me, Stephen O podcast. Nah, okay.
And it'll come up.
Yo, the best thing is just like, okay, this is actually a funny, just like a funny flex that I got is that like, I don't own business cards no more, and I just say, yo, my name's Eric Kim, just Google me.
Nice.
So I mean, the easiest thing is just Google Eric Kim, and on the YouTubes or whatever. And this is actually funny too, because like a lot of people I think follow me on Instagram, but that actually, to set the record straight, that actually isn't me.
Really?
The funny story is like about 3 years ago, I deleted my Instagram because it was bad for like my mental health and my creative output.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, I deleted my Instagram. And some benevolent soul somewhere in the world recreated my Instagram with my same handle.
Wow.
And started to curate some of what I guess that person considers my best work, mm-hmm. and use the same icon, the same profile, like linking to me. And then like they didn't do nothing like sinister with it. So I was like pretty amazed. I'm like, yo, that's kind of cool. So like, people are like, yo, if that's not you, you should like, tell the authorities. I'm like, yo, I kind of like that. I'm like, it's almost like I feel like I was memorialized before I died.
Right. You exist on there without even existing on there. That's beautiful. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I actually wanted to talk to you, to have you on. The idea of having built a platform so formidable that people can just search your name on Google and they'll stumble on everything they need to find on you. The fact that you don't need a business card anymore. It's that idea of building a personal brand. And I've been hearing you give some small talks on this topic, and that's why I kind of wanted to have you talk some more about building a personal brand, and not in the sense of getting notoriety on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter as a street photographer, not in that sense, but personal brand in the sense of an entrepreneur who is moving and shaking things in the industry that they work in. So talk to me about how that kind of got started, of you deciding to take the onus to build a platform and a brand around yourself and what you do.
Excellent question. All right. So step one, leak a sex tape.
I don't think everybody's down
I'm
to
gonna go
do
Kim
that.
K. Yo, I'm kind of bitter because actually, if you Google Kim, like my last name,
Uh-huh.
actually Kim Kardashian is number one.
Really?
And I'm like,
Still?
yo, yeah, still just under Kim, which is crazy. But anyways, so I mean, my advice is that like this is something that actually okay. So I'll just kind of share a little bit of my story, right? When I first created my website, it was just ericKimPhotography.com. I actually didn't really think too much about it. I'm like, okay, what's my name? Eric Kim. What do I like to do? Photography. Cool. I made the domain, right?
Hmm.
And actually, when I was in college, one of my life goals was actually to become number one on Google for Eric Kim. I'm like,
Wow.
yo, okay, like seems like an interesting life goal. Um, and the funny thing was, I was actually able to accomplish that while I was still an undergrad. So I went to UCLA. I'm 32 years old right now. I was born in 1988, so I'm not quite sure what year I graduated. But
Hmm.
like I worked at the UCLA IT department for UCLA undergrads,
Yeah.
and essentially they backlinked to my website because I took some photos of Royce Hall or whatever,
Nice.
and like I became almost number one on Google immediately for Eric Kim, and I'm like, yo, that happened way too fast.
Right.
And then my next life goal was to become number one on Google for street photography, which took me longer. It took me about maybe like 6 or 7 years, and
Yeah.
about like 4,000 blog posts.
So wait,
um,
did you have a background in marketing or anything of that nature in college?
oh, so this is interesting. Um,
Because no one just randomly wants to become number one on Google.
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. Um, I actually studied sociology, which most people consider to be a quite useless major, but I actually,
Hmm.
I guess intentionally or unintentionally realized that it's the perfect major to understand actually marketing. So everything I know about marketing and self-branding and promoting my name, a lot of it actually comes from sociological concepts. So for example, um, like and then because sociology is kind of good because like it's a very general major, which I love because I learned a little bit about like psychology and this and that. Like even a
Right.
simple thing, it's easier to remember somebody's name than to remember some sort of like concept, right? So like if I name my website dark shadow images photo.com, like ain't
Mm.
nobody could remember that. But like now I was thinking and then some of it's just like kind of like understanding what sticks to me. So I was like, okay, what do people remember? They remember Lamborghini. It's like, oh, that's the last dude's name. They remember Rolls, they remember Royce, like dude's
Mm.
names. They remember, Steph Curry, or they remember like Michael Jordan, like, you know, I think names, there's something about the psychology of names which kind of stick in people's head. And so all of my marketing, and I'm actually grateful I didn't actually do a marketing or a business major. And I think like my best advice is like, yo, if you actually want to master marketing or business, do not do a major in marketing or business because you're going to become this like generic, churned out version of somebody doing some stupid business
Wow.
plan. I never had a business plan. I never did anything. For me, it was just kind of more of like following my gut, cross-pollinating ideas I learned from sociology,
Hmm.
and essentially just having even my desire to become number one on Google for air cam or street photography. It was like kind of a fun personal challenge that I was interested in,
Right.
and maybe it's like a chance for me to you know like because I think like I have so much high esteem in myself, and I'm like, yo, I deserve to be up on top, and I want people to have access to it because part of it is like I'm very vain and into myself, but at the same
Mm.
time I think I'm very altruistic. I'm like, yo, like I have all this free information out there, I want people to have access to it. And
Yeah.
so that kind of I think is what drove me.
Interesting. So you went from this goal of wanting to become the top searched person in street photography,
Yep.
and you say that took you 6 to 7 years.
Yep.
Two things. How did you start on that journey to becoming ranked number one?
Mm,
And the second thing is, how did you get from zero content to like
yeah.
4,000 blog posts?
Okay, so for the record, I started my blog in 2010,
Mm,
and it's still alive now. So I guess I'm a decade in.
right.
So I think currently I'm at like Oh, am I allowed to do share screen real quick?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay, so Oh, you disabled screen sharing. Can you
Oh,
enable
did
that?
I?
Or
I don't know how to work
oh,
this
it's okay.
thing.
Don't worry about it. All right. So
Okay.
essentially, the facts is that like I think currently I have around like 7,000 published blog posts on my blog, and I my host is 101.com, and I install WordPress.org, and it's just what I've had forever.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you if I Google, I actually used the Internet Archive to look at my first blog post. It
Mm.
was so funny. It's like, yo, hello world. Like I had a hello world. Right? It's like, hello world. And this is me like when I'm like, I don't know, 21. I'm like, hello world. My name is Eric Kim. I'm into street photography and everyday life. I'm starting this blog to share some tips, inspiration, things that I'm learning along the way. Enjoy your stay, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think even now, like this is a Jay-Z quote I like, is like, treat your first like it was your last and treat your last like it was your first.
Mm.
And so I've actually found that like kind of that Zen beginner's mind Taoist notion of like every day you're a beginner is a highly good idea for me, because like I've written the same blog post like a quadrillion times,
Hmm.
but every time I do it, it becomes a little bit more distilled and refined, and a little bit more maybe a little bit deeper or profound or a different angle. And
Yeah.
so my encouragement is that like, yo, like everyone starts off at zero. Like even MJ, right? Like motherfucker, like he didn't even make the basketball team
Right.
in the beginning. So I'm like, yo, so that's where I like to like, I really like documentaries or biographies on like people I admire, because, you know, everyone had to start from somewhere. And I think blogging is the same thing. Like even now, like I did a blog post here, like the art of blogging or how I blog, and it's always changing and evolving, which is quite fun and interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it feels daunting to start something completely new.
Yep.
Because people feel like they have to compete with someone who's already established.
Yep.
When you just need to figure out how that person started, and then
Mm.
match that, or you know uh, do a lot better than they did when they started. But what would you say to someone who wants to start something today? Where's the good starting point? Because people feel like they don't have anything to share, or they don't
Mm.
have anything relevant to say. So how do you begin laying the
Mm.
foundation for your personal archive of a website, if you will?
Okay, that's a great question. So it's so funny. We're motherfucking 2020, where I have my fucking flying cars and shit, right?
Uh-huh.
It's so simple. Just make a website.
Yeah.
Website, and then essentially a website and a blog is essentially the same thing. A blog means web log, so essentially a
Hmm.
log of your activities. And you're watching like Star Trek, Captain's log, blah blah, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's kind of like blogging is like, okay, so I'm like, you remember, okay, we're about like same age, right? Do you remember
Hmm.
Zanga,
No.
Live Journal,
No, no, not at all.
dog, or okay, whatever, or like Blogger, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right, so the early days of blogging was like, yo, it's just kind of like a public diary. It's like, oh, today, I ate a croissant and I said hi to my mom or something like that, right? And then kind of somewhere along the line, it became like more of a multimedia, like a newspaper, magazine kind of publishing platform.
Hmm.
And that's where a lot of individual bloggers, I think, started to die off. And then, also kind of like this, like, and I think actually social media has been the biggest detriment to like website and blog building. Cause like, truth
Yeah.
be told, building a website, it's like, it's far more tricky than to just like boom make a Facebook page, or boom make a Twitter, or boom make
That's a
an
good point.
Instagram, whatever. So I would say to photographers, the biggest thing holding you back is having an Instagram. Like I put my skin in the game 3 years ago. I had like 6,000 followers on Instagram, and that's when Instagram was still growing too. Like I deleted my Instagram to just be like, hey yo, like I want to really assert my opinion that having your own website, your own self-hosted website is the key. So like the simple thing is, using a domain provider like, bluehost.com or 101.com. I personally use 101.com because I created it a decade ago,
Hmm.
but they're kind of a little sleazy. Bluehost.com seems to be a better platform. And it only costs you like $10 a month. I'm like, yo, if you have a Spotify account, you got Amazon Prime, you got Netflix.
Mm.
I'm like, yo, you have no excuse not to have your own website. And then, just install WordPress.org. I think Bluehost.com has a pretty easy WordPress.org thing. And, essentially WordPress is the backend behind publishing blogging. And essentially, a website and a blog is the same thing, but the best way to get your name out there, I have a two thing approach. The first thing is to just blog as much as you can,
Yeah.
and the second is just to have a YouTube channel and mention your name and your blog or website or whatever. So like, I've I've had my YouTube now for like a decade, and then that's back before there was even ads or ways to monetize.
Right.
And I just happened to be like, yo, what's up, Street Talks? Eric Kim from the Eric Kim Street Photography. It just kind of became my thing.
Right.
And also the history of the word Street Talks was there's some other dude on Twitter who had like a hashtag called Togs. I'm like, yo, I want to create a hashtag for street photographers. I'll just call it
Ah.
Street Togs. So that's essentially the genesis of the term. And
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Like once I started to, other people started to hashtag that. I'm like, yo, this is kind of cool. I created a movement, but that's probably the best thing. And also with YouTube, this is my strategy: is I don't have no ads on YouTube's,
Hmm.
and YouTube has always been just like a free place for me to upload videos and just direct people back to my blog. Because like most people who attend my workshops, they never like, yo, I love your blog. They're like, I love your YouTube videos. So I was like, so there must be something about sharing your face with other people. Like
Yeah.
even with you, Steven, like I've never met you, but like, I'm looking at you in the video,
Right.
cool dude. I like your glasses, kind of got the military look on, look like you got some cool books or whatever. And
Right.
so as a consequence, I trust you more. And actually, even now, I think creating a podcast, I think a good idea. I mean, it's kind of like the more bougie YouTube, is my opinion.
Right.
And
Right.
I made a podcast just for fun. It's like Anchor.fm or something, or just like the
Uh-huh.
free app. And I really don't do it because I want a big podcast following. It was just more like, yo, I know some of my friends, they prefer to live podcast instead of YouTube, and they don't want to
Mm.
watch YouTube while they're driving. So I just created the podcast, and I just upload the audio files of the vlogs I typically do. And
Yeah.
so I would say that's probably the two big things. Yeah, website and YouTube.
For the website though, I think you might be oversimplifying a little bit. I
Hmm.
think it takes a lot to create relevant and valuable content in the blog format.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're someone who comes from that sociology background, who's read a lot, who
Mm.
understands philosophy, and you're able to take and piecemeal things from sociology and philosophy and compare it to your practice of photography, and you're able to
Mm.
marry some things together to
Yeah.
form really relevant content that is teachable to people
Mm.
who are interested in that. So I feel
Mm.
like it's not necessarily to just blog meaningless stuff, it's to blog something that people actually want to engage with, right?
Oh, quick question, Steven. What did you study?
So I studied pre-med,
Oh.
yeah, it wasn't going anywhere.
Uh-huh.
I wish I had studied sociology and philosophy and psychology.
I actually studied philosophy on my own. I
Really?
discovered sociology was just like low key philosophy.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's simplifying it to say that just blog something that's actually meaningful and people actually want that kind of information.
Mm.
How did you get to a point where you went from like your first blog to uh, creating actual real content that you knew
Mm.
people were looking for? There's a lot of things that I've consumed on your website that was very meaningful to me, like
Well, like what, like for example, what?
the 100 lessons from Masters of Photography,
Yeah.
and being able to I don't have, let's say I don't have the money to buy a bunch of Magnum books.
Yep.
You've condensed this information into a really digestible format of, if it's a PDF, download it, and you can have so much information from all the legendary photographers that you want.
Mm.
And you've boiled down all their messages into very quick to digest content. So I feel like that's a
Mm.
lot of work that people are missing out on. So
Yo,
how
okay.
do you go
So
from
yeah.
zero to that?
Oh, okay, that's a great question. So first of all, Stephen, I'm so grateful that the 100 Mass has been useful to you, because like
Yeah,
just a
man.
quick backstory. Um, Around the time I had the idea to write that, I actually got approached by kind of like a smaller indie publisher, and they wanted to actually publish a book about that.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, that's cool, but I want a free PDF to be available online. And they're just essentially, oh, we could put a free sample chapter. I'm like, no, I want the whole thing. And
Why did you
they,
want that?
cause like, okay, I don't know about, okay, like, so for me to get personal, Steven, you grew up rich?
What's that?
Did you grow up rich?
No, no, no.
How'd you grow up?
I mean, middle class, parents working around the clock 24/7 to
Yeah.
put food on the table.
What'd your
Um,
parents do?
Mother's a nurse. Dad
Mm,
basically just works a bunch of jobs to
okay.
be able to provide.
Okay. So, all right, a little bit about my background. All right.
Yeah.
So, to share the juicy Eric Kim story, right? More or less, I kind of grew up with a single mom, abusive dad, blah, blah. My
Mm,
mom's like hustling her ass off, working like three jobs, waitress, house cleaning, blah, blah. And so growing up, like, I grew up poor and, never poor enough that I wasn't like getting no food on the table. But I was so hungry to learn and, do this and that. And that's actually why I'm like such a big fan of like the Rico and like stuff like that. So I believe that no matter what your income, your background, or whatever is, you should have at least have the access to have access to the ideas to become great.
hmm.
And so it's like the very simple thing is that like I essentially created what I wanted to see manifest in the world, which is like what I consider the best primer to the masters of photography, street photography, to actually empower people. And like I mean, I don't know about you, right? Like I don't like to pay for stuff on the internet. Like I like to download for free, right? So like,
Right.
it's I mean, like I don't know, that's just me, but I don't like to pay for stuff. So so I was just like, don't do unto others as you don't want us to do. Like, I freaking
Mm.
hate paywalls. I think it's like quite stupid. And so I just put everything up online for free. And wait, what was your initial question, Stephen?
So basically, how did you go from no content to actually
Oh,
publishing a
okay,
lot
okay.
of these
So
things?
all right, so some thoughts. I actually don't like to say the word content. I like to use the word substance.
Hmm.
Because okay, this is my thought. I hate it when people talk about quote unquote content because to me, like, have you seen that the McDonald's like the pink sludge chicken McNugget thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So when people mention content, like I kind of get the heebie. Like
yeah.
it's like that fucking
I
that
hear
thing
you.
they're trying to fucking squeeze out of the thing and they
Yeah.
kind of put out there. I'm like, that is so disrespectful. Like anytime someone talks about my content, I'm like, okay, I know what you're trying to say, but I find that highly offensive. And it's not because the person's a bad person. It's just more of like the nomenclature has turned into this weird thing where it's like,
Yeah.
all about the content, right? But I prefer the word substance. So like to me, for it to be substance, substantive, and to me, it's not even whether it's like good or bad or whatever. It's more like, is it like personal, meaningful? Is it honest?
Hmm.
And so like even if you have no experience in blogging or vlogging or whatever I think the key is to be authentic in whatever you do. And like, there's so many examples, like Seth Godin, right? Like the guy only writes like two sentences. So like you could
Right.
do like a micro blog, right? Or for me, I like to, I like to do both. Sometimes I just have an idea, I just put out to the internet, and sometimes I like to go deep because for me to write or blog or vlog, it's meta thinking where as I'm writing through an idea, I kind of discover a deeper truth. And
Hmm.
so, like even me after reading philosophy and going to college and like I've discovered like the truth I've discovered is the best experiences to talk about are just your personal experiences. Because I remember, I actually, to give a shout out to Cindy, I remember actually when I was in, about to start my blog, I'm like, man, I'm not complaining to Cindy. I'm like, man, I want to learn street photography, but there's no resource on the internet how to shoot street photography.
Hmm.
And then she was like, yo, why don't you just make a blog or a website? And I'm like, but I don't know nothing. And she's like, that's cool, like you just share what you learn along the way. And then also people like to follow the hero's journey or whatever. So I'm like,
Wow.
okay, I guess I'll do it. So then I made the blog, and I haven't really looked back since then. So like to me, even like the way I see the blog, like I actually kind of got fucked up in blogging once I got like trying to make it good. And
Hmm.
so now it's like I don't even try to make it good or like I just try to make it like interesting, entertaining, and just for me to be honest. So like, and it's sharing my whole life, my life journey essentially. It's like sharing I call it like life blogging. My
Hmm.
blog is like everything you need to know about Eric Kim and about my life, and it's always changing and growing.
I love that, man. I really love that. I think there's something to people being honest with what they're sharing. You're not an expert at something, and you're just making sure that people understand that you want to bring people along with you as you learn as well. And there's so much to share. That was the idea behind this podcast. I feel like
Mm.
I'm learning from people who inspire me, people like
Oh
you.
yeah.
So I feel like if I provide a platform that allows other people to have access to the messages and the
Mm.
substantive quality stuff that people are sharing, and then
Mm.
everybody gets to learn, everybody gets to eat. But yeah, you were talking about the indie publishing company that approached you for that book,
Yeah.
and they weren't necessarily agreeing to
Mhm.
sharing that PDF. So where did it go from there?
Okay, so do you like Kanye West?
Oh, I loved Kanye West before before his recent, you know, I don't even know what to call it, but he's changed significantly.
All right, so one of the people who actually one of my biggest like inspirations is probably Kanye West.
Yeah.
The reason is this: actually, during the time, my gut reaction and my gut feeling was, "Yo, my inner truth says I should not compromise what I truly believe in, even
Mm,
if I could make like, I think maybe the deal, like I'm not 100% sure, but maybe let's say maybe I could have made like $10,000 off it or $20,000, whatever it is, right? And I'm like, yo, my gut and my own inner morals and ethics say, yo, Eric, don't compromise, even if you can make a buttload of money off of this. And also kind of I have the benefit, kind of grew up poor, and my mom's, I think she's on bankruptcy once or twice and stuff. I'm like, yo, you get broke, it's cool, you can still eat, right? Whatever. So in that situation, I think I was like, like my favorite Kanye West album of all time is Yeezus.
uh-huh.
And there's this one song he has. It's like, all you niggas can't control me. I know that we the new slaves. I know that we the new slaves. About to wild the fuck up. I'm about to go Bobby Boucher. And I'm like, and then so like the idea that like, yo, I cannot let other people or the industry or money or whatever like kind of control me. And then I listen to Alba and I'm like, yo, cut it off.
Hmm.
And actually, even now that I think about it, the proudest moments in my life isn't actually what I did do, it's what I did not do. It's like what Nassim Taleb calls like the via negativa approach. So
Mm,
like things I'm proud of is that like saying no to the offer, or like other things I'm proud of is like deleting my Instagram. Like things which like it's essentially it's like it's kind of like the whole Rosa Parks attitude is that like by refusing to stand up, like she technically didn't do anything, but she refused to do something that she didn't believe in.
right.
And so like I think that was the big thing, is just like, you know, having proof in the pudding is that through your actions you show your true beliefs. And my true belief in open source knowledge and information and collective human flourishing, I think really kind of came out in that moment where I was actually put to the test, where money was on my mind.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
That's great. So the open source thing came internally. It came out of just you ruminating and thinking about how you wanted to live your life as this person who comes from this background and wants
Hmm.
to share. Or did that concept come from people you were looking up to at the time?
Oh, that's interesting. So okay, so do you remember? Okay, um, so we kind of both grew up in the '90s, right?
Right.
Yo, do you remember like AOL?
Yeah, of course.
What version did you have?
God, I don't know. I first came to the United States in 2001. So whatever, wherever the AOL was at that time, that's what I caught up on.
All right, so okay, I'm actually really grateful. Like, I think you're a great. Probably, this is probably the best interview I've done. So,
Oh,
shout
wow.
out to you,
That's
Stephen.
huge.
I
Thank
I
you.
appreciate this. So, a little for me to incriminate myself. So, I've never said this publicly, but here it is. Okay, so okay, imagine me. I'm in New York. I'm in Bayside, Queens. Like when I was a kid. I think I was in the maybe third or fourth grade. I don't remember. And I still remember the first computer I ever got. Right, it was like an Acer Aspire,
Hmm.
Pentium One, some MMX technology. I think it had like, I don't even remember, like 1 gigabyte hard drive. It was like a big deal. And at the time, I thought I had a 56K modem, but I actually had a 38.8K modem. So like I would always get disconnected. And so I'm like a kid, I want to play video games, but I don't got no money, and I want to do this and that, right? And so in the early days, I became the original internet pirate at like age like how old is we like so if I'm in the fourth grade, I'm 11, 12
No. In fourth grade?
in fourth grade. How old are you?
Probably like what?
10 or 11?
No, because I was 10 in seventh grade, so you've got to be like 7 or 6.
Anyways, however, okay, this is what I remember. I think a year or two after, like, and this is when I started watching porn. So I think I was around like puberty age, right? So I was like 12, okay?
Okay.
So let's assume I'm 11 or 12. You know, okay, as a kid, and then my mom's poor or whatever, right? We don't got no money for me to, buy X, Y, and Z. And so through my pure desire, and I actually remember pirating my first version of the original Grand Theft Auto on PC.
Mm.
And there was like something called Warez, WAREZ, and WinRAR files in the early days of pirating. And like as a kid, 11, 12-year-old kid, I had zero ethical,
Right.
moralistic qualms about piracy. It comes like, like if I had the money, I'd buy it, but I don't. I'm like a kid, like I don't
Of
have a
course.
job, right? And so actually, even in the early days, I think, and for a while, actually, I became a seeder where I actually would, give people files and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then I got a letter in the mail from AOL saying, "Oh, we have detected internet piracy. If you continue to do this, we're gonna shut
Wow.
you down." And then my mom's like, I'm like 12. My mom's like, "What's this?" I'm like, don't worry about it. So I used to burn through like, NetZero, all the free memberships, whatever. So to me, the internet was like it was like, okay, back then it was like fucking magic. Now, like I feel bad for the Gen Zers because they don't know what life was like pre-internet.
Yeah.
And so the internet really empowered me. Like I connected all these people in the world. Like to me, it felt like magic, and the internet actually empowered me. And so, thinking about that when I'm a kid and now, I'm like, like I've actually, like, it was funny. I was walking around campus, and there's like a high schooler who's like, "Yo, Eric, is that you, Eric Camp? Yo, I've been following you since I was like, 12 years old." I was like, "Whoa!" Like,
Wow.
I can't even think about that. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess I've been on YouTube for like 10 years." So like, some of these kids who might be watching my videos or whatever, I'm like, I don't want like none of these kids not having access to potential things which could empower them. And
Brilliant.
so, I was thinking, I'm like, if I put my money where my mouth is, right? I'm like, people like, how would you feel like if people pirated your stuff? I'm like, I don't feel fine about it. I give it away for free anyways.
Hmm.
Then people are like, but that's not what everyone else does. And actually, so what I do, this is what I found to be an interesting thing. If I really like a musician's album, I'll buy it, like
Yes.
via the Apple Store or whatever. And it's not because like I feel bad about it, but it's more of like a badge of honor because I'll be like, I'm a real Yeezy fan because I actually paid $9.99 for like Jesus Kid.
Right.
And also this is where like Nassim Taleb has helped me a lot in terms of my philosophical thinking, skin in the game. You never really know if you like an artist unless you pay money for their work. Because like, for me, 10 bucks is nothing, but still like there's a little bit of that pain associated with paying for something.
Yeah.
And so like,
especially
like, for example,
especially buying records too. Like I love records, so like to invest, more than $10 in a record of someone you love is like,
that's real talk. Like, and then, for example, like the new Jay Electronica album. You listen to Jay Electronica?
Yeah.
Have you listened to his new album?
His new album is the first album I actually listened to.
It is, I consider, probably the best 2 rap albums of all time.
Maybe I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, anyway, like, that's my.
But it was beautiful. Right? It was beautifully produced.
I wanted to buy it, but I couldn't find nowhere to buy it. So that's why I'm kind of like this anti-subscription models too, because I'm like, I want to just like buy. Like I don't know. I'll pay like $20. Let's say I wanted to buy it. I'm like, I want to pay $20. I want to download it, right?
Yeah.
But now there's nowhere on the internet where you could actually buy and download his album. So I'm like, motherfucker, this sucks. Like I'm just like watching the YouTube, playlist on repeat. I'm like, this is whack, and I think Tidal is cool, but I'm like, man, I don't want to pay $10 a month and be, shackled to Tidal. And so I'm like, and the way I've been able to monetize my business is more or less like, give away everything for free and, make my money through teaching workshops or through, consulting, blah, blah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to get into. So like if you embrace this idea of open source, making everything available to the public,
Yep.
how do you make a living? From the outside looking in, I'm just so confused because I'm like, if he's giving away all these like book quality content away
Yeah.
for
Oh,
free,
thank you, thank you.
how does he make money?
Yo, the secret is at night I'm actually a Korean hot boy stripper porn star. Yo,
That
okay,
makes
this is
sense.
crazy. Yo, okay, it wasn't cool to be Korean when I was a kid growing up. It
Uh-huh.
only became cool like now I'm too old. I'm like, man, I kind of totally missed the sauce on that. But anyways, all right, no, I'm just kidding.
That's usually
Obviously,
the way it is, though. I mean,
I only do on the weekends. But anyways, okay. So
yeah.
this is what the goal is. So the reason I actually really wanted to do this interview with you is because like, most people know Eric Kim as a street photographer, blah blah. And I
Yeah.
quite like it that you're like approaching from the entrepreneurship perspective because this is actually something I'm very passionate about that I didn't actually know I was passionate about until maybe more recently. And so, like, I think this is where studying Stoicism, which is like the philosophy of like everything's upside, nothing's downside.
Mm.
Essentially, it's like my tip is live like structure your life where you can live at the poorest person possible. And so, you know, so for I'll give you an example. Me and Cindy, we don't own a car, right? We
Mm.
have zero debt, like no debt of none at all. Um, the meat that I eat, I do intermittent fasting. I don't eat breakfast, lunch, and I typically break my fast around like 6 p.m. or 8 p.m.
Yeah.
All I eat is like fatty pork, which is like 99 cents a pound, or chicken legs, which is like 99 cents a pound. So I can feed myself on less than like $5 a day, and I eat a lot of meat. So like even if I
Interesting.
eat 5 pounds of meat a day, yo, it costs me less than $5 a day to feed me. And now with COVID and stuff like that, I ain't got nothing to spend my money on, right? And so my expenses are so low. Like the only thing I would ever splurge, you know what? I ain't gonna spend money no more. Like I don't remember the last time I bought myself nothing, right? I got my laptop, you know, I got my camera. Like as long as I could eat meat, I'm happy. And to me,
Yeah.
and I think this is where I can actually sincerely say that I don't really care for money, in the sense that I remember as a kid, I kind of grew up with no money, and my goal is more like freedom in life. And
Hmm.
I kind of grew up poor, so I kind of know that like, having money is not that big of a deal, and so like bridging that forward, even now, like I technically don't really need to work, but the only reason I still do these online workshops and charge people money is that when people have to pay for something,
Yeah.
they kind of don't fuck around.
That's a good
So
point.
like
Yeah.
even I've been doing these like Zoom online workshops, which has actually been good fun.
Yeah.
Like I'm like for this workshop I'm charging like $99, right? It's like it's just enough where like it's steep enough so people like it's a filter that you don't get a bunch of bozos to come in, but at the
Hmm.
same time it's not too expensive that nobody could afford it. So I feel like actually right now with these online workshops, it's the ultimate realized version of kind of like what I consider like more democratic access, and also like once again, and this is the funny thing, me and Cindy, we got racks in the bank. So I'm like, yo, if we just lived off our savings, right? Like for me, I could probably live for 20 years without having to work ever again.
Wow. Yeah.
So like, yo, and then I don't have to. And then another epiphany I had. The only material thing I wanted to buy was a Lambo, and then I discovered, yo, what if I could transform my body into a Lambo, right? And so I was like, okay, I don't want a Lambo no more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now teaching is kind of more fun, and even when I'm doing this interview podcast with you, it's just kind of fun and entertaining for me. And for
Yeah.
people who are interested in like, making money on the internet, simplest thing is just create a PayPal buy it now account, just, you can even accept Venmo, and charging people more rather than product. Like, I think it's good to sell physical products because you can't pirate a camera strap, right? So
Right.
like, even if you search like Eric Kim neck strap or Henri neck strap, Cindy built this, side company called Haptic Industries, which means like
Hmm.
the sense of touch. And so, you can't pirate a camera strap. And then, like as an artisan, I wanted to create the most beautiful objects possible. And then we created that for, for fun essentially. And it
Yeah.
was like, kind of like, I never could find an ideal camera strap. So, you know, I created my own with Cindy. And so even with, teaching online Zoom workshops, I think it's a huge opportunity that people don't understand is like kind of being underexploited right now. So
Yeah.
those are some of my thoughts.
Were you teaching online prior to COVID, or did that inspire you to take on online workshops?
Well, it's funny because people have been teaching online workshops and seminars for almost like a decade.
That's true. Yeah.
And I was just like, it just never appealed to me. I'm just like, it sounds whack. It sounds stupid, right? Like, I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of get it, but whatever, right? And essentially, what changed my mind was, Cindy is the root of all great things.
Right.
My wife, Cindy Wynn. And she encouraged me to teach an online workshop. And she was also a professor. So, she's been having to teach the kids online with the whole Zoom thing.
Right.
And so, she actually taught me how to use Zoom, uh, all the setup, and she's like a master at digital pedagogy. And so I was
Mm.
like, she's like, you should teach an online workshop. I'm like, I'm not really feeling it. And then she pushed me and she encouraged me, and she's like, maybe just try it out and see how you like it. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just try it out and see how it is, right? And so I scheduled my first workshop. It's like an online creativity photography workshop. Motherfucker sold out like that. And I'm like, whoa,
Wow.
I guess this is kind of a thing. And I just sent out an email newsletter on Mailchimp. And there was so much attention that like I even needed an encore because there's not enough spots. And so I did this online workshop. And then the thing was, as I taught the workshop, I had so much fun, and I innovated while I was teaching the workshop. I connected my MacBook Pro to an iPad. I
Mm.
used the lightning cable. I did some live demos. So even if you search like Air Kim online Zoom workshop, I have a lot of the content or the
Wow.
substance on
Yeah.
YouTube for
Yeah. Yeah.
free.
Wow.
So, and then I even made a blog post titled like "How to Teach Your Own Photography Online Zoom Workshop." And once again, like I wanted it to be a generative thing. Like I want to help other photographers make money. I want to help other photographers get rich. I'm like, yo, like all these fucking losers I've met in the past, are like, oh, Eric Kim, you're such an asshole because of you, you're giving all your shit away for free. Now I can't make money. I'm like, yo, quit being a crybaby. Like, do something about it. And so, like, I found that the more you can empower other people and then generate other people's motivation,
Yeah.
like, you cannot help but like make money, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's true. I think a lot of us feel like we have to go for the strategy that gets us to the money first, and
Yeah.
then everything else will come after. But I think there's something to be said for creating something that gives you this position where people look to you for, valuable stuff that they're looking for, answers to things that they're looking for. And in doing that, I think there's a business guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
old,
but
good old GB.
exactly. But he's got this the concept of what is it? Jab, 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 punch, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which right, which is basically give, 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 give. It's given and given and given to the point where people love that you're given too much stuff,
Mm,
valuable stuff that they feel like they have to pay for, that by the time you leverage a punch and
yeah.
you ask them for $20 for a book, they're like, yeah, I'm willing to
Mm.
give you $20 for this book because you've given me so much.
Yo,
um,
Steven, what do you think about Gary Vee?
Gary Vee, I was never a real business person
Yeah.
until I stumbled on Gary Vee. I think his message and the way he delivers his message made it palatable for me to get into it. So
Is
that was
is
my
is
entry point into
is
learning
is
about
is
business.
is is Senor V the real deal?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think he can't help but be authentic. I think a lot of people have, things to say about his, methodologies.
Why
And
do people criticize him so much?
I mean, I feel like there's so much about, and very similar to you, there's so much about a personality that's not towing the line, that's not going with the grain. He goes against the grain in how he delivers, presentations, how he curses on stage,
Yeah.
and just his philosophy and business model. I think is trying to get to the point where he's let's say amassed millions or billions of dollars, but doing it in a
Mm.
way that's um, he's not having to trample over people to get to that point.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
so I mean, I think the criticisms are warranted,
Mm.
but I think at the end of the day, you have to look at the upside of things. Like
I think they're just jealous of him.
I mean that's a good analysis.
People is mad jelly, yo.
Yeah.
Um, or like, okay, so all right, so back to your question for me. What was your original question for me?
I don't even remember. We were talking
It was
about
about
where,
making money, or the
yeah,
whole.
making
Oh, okay,
money and feeling like,
okay,
you know,
all right. Yo, okay, I'll give you the secret sauce, all right? So this is like my personal philosophy on making money is, all right, so I'll give some practical thoughts and also some more philosophical thoughts.
mhm,
So one of the very, very useful notions is this notion of anchoring. So I actually read this from psychology book, probably the only good psychology book that's ever been written. It's called like Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
mm,
And he essentially uncovers some sort of mental biases that we got. So one of them is called anchoring. So, for example, if I ask you, hey, Stephen, how old do you think I am? Do you think I'm older than 50 or less than 50?
less than 50.
Right? Or let me ask you, Stephen, how old do you think I am? Older than 20, less than 20?
Mm.
Or let me say, what's the last expensive thing you bought?
Yo, you want me to answer?
Yeah, I want your answer.
A camera,
How much it cost?
about $800.
Which camera?
It was a Mamiya 645.
Oh, that's the beast. Okay, so let's say your Mamiya costs $800, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's say before you bought that thing, you looked at the Leica website and you're like, okay, M10, that's like 7 Gs, right?
Yeah.
And then you feel good about your Mamiya purchase because like, yo, I only spent $800. The fucking Leica M10 is like, $8 grand, right?
Right.
Let's say I was like, yo, I bought this like secondhand Ricoh GR3 for like $20. And then now you're spending $800 on Mamiya, you feel stupid, right?
Right.
Or similarly, like, you go to this happens all the time with like, camera purchases, right? It's like everyone seems to buy the Fujifilm. Why? Because like it's like it's not as expensive as the Leica. It's kind of like a better bang for the buck. And so the notion of framing is that you anchor a person's perception to the value of a thing by describing something else that's so much, because no one really knows how much things should cost.
Mm.
But like example, if I went to the Louis V store, right, and I saw they had like a fucking vest for like $5,000, and then let's say I buy a Louis V wallet for like $400, I would like not feel so bad about it because I'm like, yo, it's like $400 for a wallet, yeah, a lot of money, but at least I didn't buy the $10,000 jacket. And
Right.
so marketers do this all the time. It's like you buy the car, right? They have it's like kind of like a decoy, right? They have the insanely expensive model, which is like the Tesla Roadster, which is like 200 Gs, and then you look at the Model S, which is like maybe like 100 Gs. You're like it's like not as expensive as that, so you feel kind of good about your purchase.
Yeah.
So similarly, I found that one of the best ways to monetize services or monies and stuff like that, you got to anchor it to a higher price, and then offer some sort of like early bird discount, and also it kills two birds with one stone too, because it incentivizes people. Like if people know there's a time crunch to sign up for something, they're more incentivized to sign up for it before they lose out on the big deal
Right.
than if, let's say, they bought it immediately. So that's anchoring for you, which is actually very important. And the second thing is like charge money and sell yourself and your services like how you would like to experience it. So taking it back to the paying for content, right? Like I don't like to pay for I don't like to pay for ebooks or music, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but so I'll give you an example. I love the Kanye Yeezus album, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to pay money for it, but as a consequence, when he toured for the Yeezus tour, I paid like, I don't know, $90 or $100 or whatever to go to his Oakland Coliseum and watch Yeezy live, right?
Right.
And so I think people like to spend money on experiences because you cannot duplicate that. And I philosophize about this a lot too, because like I don't care who you is, somewhere deep down below, to pay money for digital anything,
Yeah.
it seems kind of stupid, because you're like, yo, it didn't cost you anything to duplicate it. Why are you charging money? And I understand that. Oh, it take you a hard time to buy. But I'm like, but still, that like people could say one thing, but then they act a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And so kind of the same thing is that like don't do unto others as you don't want others to do unto you. So even for example, my YouTube, I don't put ads on YouTube because I fucking hate it when other people put ads on their YouTube
My
videos.
God, yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, I guess, okay, I get, like, I don't spite nobody for it. I'm like, okay, I get it, that's how you make your money. But I'm like, as for me as a viewer, I don't like it when other people do it to me. So how am I about to do it to somebody else? That's to me, that's severe injustice. And I think Nassim Taleb calls it the silver rule of ethics. Don't do unto others as you don't want others to do unto you. So if people say, if I don't like it when people, say nasty things about me, I ain't going to say nasty things about other people behind their
Right.
back either. And so this kind of ethical rule, I think, is actually important to making money.
No, that's great. That's great. It's very similar to, like you said, YouTube and podcasts are very similar. And, doing ads on podcasts is something that I've been thinking about.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it, Steven. Don't do it.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the one thing I hate is
sell some
advertisements.
Sell glasses. Teach other people how to do a podcast. Sell watches.
So I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm someone who cares very much about value and keeping things as minimal as possible, and populating ads on podcast episode is something that I'm still thinking about.
Don't do it.
I think it can be valuable if. I think it can be valuable if it's met with a sponsor that fits very well in line with the mission of your platform.
Okay, I'll give you some free consulting advice. And I usually charge like $500 an hour, right? So facts, right? So instead of advertising other people on podcasts, advertise yourself. You're like, yo, what's up? This is Steven from Artisans and like, yo. This episode brought to you by Steven Consulting Services.
I heard your concept of that, yeah.
Yeah, like if you use like somebody who needs a kickstart of motivation, creativity, you're kind of like depressed during COVID, and you want to be more creative, you want to learn how to create your own podcast, hit me up. My email is steveno@gmail.com.
Right.
And then I could give you a free consulting service for an hour. And then if you decide to do things with me, I charge like, $199 an hour or whatever it is. Or if it's like, yo, I created my own brand of watches or, camera straps or, whatever it is, right? Then you kind of sell yourself as a personality. Cause like, even me talking to you, I'm like, yo, he's highly intelligent, good researcher. He could help me. And so, what people want, man, okay. I don't know anyone who ever like an ad. I'll give you a real example. I used to listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then do you know why I stopped listening to him? Yo, don't listen to it.
So don't listen
Waste of time. I'll give you a better one. Listen to James Altucher. Do you know James Altucher?
I've heard of his story on a podcast that I listened to.
Dog, this guy's the fucking G. This guy's the real deal. I don't listen to Tim Ferriss podcast no more. This is why I think. Okay. I used to commute to LA and stuff like that and stuck in a car for 2 hours a day. So I'm like, yo, podcasts prevented me from shooting myself in the head, right? And so I used to listen to Tim Ferriss because, like, he's interviewing some really big shot people that I like and stuff like that. But every time I'm like driving, it fucking puts on an ad. I'm like, okay, I'm driving and on my phone, which is on my dashboard. I'm like trying to fast forward it. I actually once almost got into an accident because I tried to fast forward through his ads. I'm like, yo.
I've heard he has like 5 different ads throughout one episode.
Like another thing too, right? It's like, okay, so this is true story. He hugely inspired me because, I read his 4-Hour Work Week when I was in college.
Yeah.
Like, so props to him, right? But I'm like, yo, you're already rich. Why do you need to monetize more? I'm like, so like, to me, he lost a little bit of my respect and genuinity because I'm like, yo, if you really, really, like doing it because you really care, and I assume he's already rich, right? So I'm like, why do you really got to make so much more money and just kind of like ruin everyone's experience? Because I'm like, you'd be probably smarter, like, he promotes his newsletter, which is very smart. I think that's hugely smart. I'm like, yo, just keep writing books and then just, make money selling your books or, charge $1 million for a speaking engagement. I'm sure the seats would add up. And so like, I'm getting like super sus of him. And like most of the people's, I'm just like, man, I'm just like so sus of everyone. I can't trust nobody no more. But yeah, so I would say, and Steven, if you want me to pimp you out, dude, I'll be like, yo, if you're trying to be more creative, talk to my boy Steven. He's the man, man. So no to ads. I don't know nobody who likes an advertising. Advertisement, like, yeah, I'm like so anti-ad. But it's funny, you could advertise yourself. So you go to my blog.
Yeah.
I got ads on the side, but those
Right.
are my services. I'm advertising myself, which is so much smarter.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's funny because I was listening to a talk you gave. I feel like it was at Google or something
Oh
similar
yeah,
to
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And when you said that, don't advertise other companies, advertise yourself. It was like a
Yeah.
huge light bulb moment because I'm like, duh, it makes so
Yo,
much
because
sense.
think about it this way, okay? Like, this is kind of like taking it back to Senor Yeezy, right?
Yeah.
Yo, he could be advertising Nike for the rest of his life, but yo, the fact that he put his name on a product, create his own product, and promote
Mm,
himself, so fucking smart, so smart. Like,
yeah.
I'll give some real life facts too. Is that like I used to do a lot of stuff with Leica, right? And Leica, they're like the Rolls Royce of cameras, right? And then
Right.
everyone wants to be associated with Leica, and then I would say nothing but good things about Leica because a lot of the early guys in the JJ, Christian, they actually helped me out tremendously when I was like 21 years old and kind of getting my foot in the door. But what I discovered soon after, and this is why actually I don't believe in brand collaborations no more, is you end up becoming a low-key prisoner to any brand.
Mm,
So I'll give you another example. I also did stuff with Fujifilm in the past. You know, Fujifilm gave me some free cameras, and like Leica never gave me free stuff. I don't think they really do that. But you always feel like a little bit of prisoner of a brand because you want to like you're always afraid that you're gonna lose some sort of like sponsorship deal, whatever.
right.
And so like at the time, I had my Ricoh GR3, but Ricoh GR2, and I felt kind of bad promoting it because I'm like, oh, I'm doing this thing with Fuji, or like back in the past, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this thing with Leica, and actually, I was like shooting with my DSLR. And I'm like, yo, I can't, be shooting with these other brands because it might fuck up my sponsorship. And so now this is just like my personal philosophy. If anybody is brand sponsored and talks about recommendations, zero trust in them. So
Mm,
anyone who's like an ambassador of anything, zero trust. And so now, like, I have no brand sponsorships.
yeah.
So now when you listen to Eric Kim's opinion, you might not agree with me, but it's 100% my authentic opinion
Yeah.
versus, let's say I was getting free cameras from like, Fujifilm or Leica or whatever. You can't really trust my opinion because, use a slate, and I said this in the past too. I'm like, oh, this is just my honest opinion. Does that is true, but still at the back of your head, somewhere in that part back there's always a little bit of fear of saying something bad about something.
Yeah.
And so you'll never be fully, that's why once again, like I have zero qualms about promoting myself, my products, my personal brand, whatever. And certainly the most useful thing you have in your life is your name,
Mm, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
Stephen, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Obisanya.
Obisanya.
Yeah.
Yo, so I'll be like, yo, I'm Stephen Obi, like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm like, yo, what's up? I'm the fucking Jedi of like, creative
Jedi
stuff
of
like that.
photography.
Because like this is just like my personal thing is just like when you first send me an email,
Yeah.
like me as like somebody who's been growing up in the States, I kind of like had a hard time pronouncing your last name. And I'm like, I'm a little afraid. I'm like, yo, like I don't want to mispronounce his name.
Yeah.
There's always that political correctness. But if you're
Right.
just
Right.
like, yo, my name is Stephen Obi, like maybe that might be disrespectful to your culture, but like at least it's easier to remember from a business
Right.
perspective.
Yeah.
So if I was you, I'd just go by Stephen Obi.
Interesting. Interesting. It's funny
That'll,
because
that'll be
this.
that'll be $500, please.
It's funny because when I was a kid and I would watch what's the show Steve-O, what's he from
Jackass.
Jackass. Yeah, I was like, oh, I could go by Steve-O. That could be my my
Yeah, you
public
can be
name.
Steve-O. Yeah, go by
That's
Steve.
true.
I kind of like those Stephen Obi, Stephen
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, because I'm the Jedi of podcasting. Yo, that'd be fire, dude.
That's interesting.
That'd be fire.
Talk to me about there was a video that I saw a few years ago. You at a Magnum workshop with Constantine Manos, David Allen Harvey, and a bunch of others. Talk to me about the importance of attending workshops. Is there something to be taken from such in-person workshops where you're getting feedback from photographers who are masters at their craft? Just talk to me about the general experience about being at a workshop and the value it brings.
Yeah. So a little background about that. I'm glad you brought that. Man, you did your homework, man. Dude, Stephen Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Honestly, I didn't have
so.
to do homework because I've just been, watching a lot of your stuff over the years.
Oh,
So
dude, I actually appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
So A little background about that. So um, they were doing a workshop in Provincetown,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and then at the time, I've been teaching workshops for a long time, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I'd be kind of curious, like, what would it be like if I attended a workshop? And
Mm.
initially, I was actually quite keen on attending a Bruce Gilden workshop because, like,
Okay.
my thought was like, yo, if I'm charging money, people come to my workshops, I should charge. I should actually pay money to attend someone else's workshop to see what the experience is like, right?
Exactly.
But I was lucky because they're offering scholarships to photographers under the age of 30. And I
Oh.
think at the age I was 28. And so Cindy actually told me about, I think it was actually Cindy who told me, all good things come to Cindy, right? So Cindy was like, yo, why don't you apply to the scholarship? I'm like, I'm not gonna get it. Like, she's like, oh, just put your name in the bucket. I'm like, all right, cool. I just applied for it. And boom, I got it. And I was like, yo,
Wow.
I got free room and board, free tuition. So it's like, cool, I'm going to Provincetown, right? So I go there, and it was hugely beneficial to me because it
Mm.
kind of gave me a chance to be a kid again or be a student again. And hanging out with my buddy Carl Edwards, who runs streetshootr.com, where he has a YouTube channel, my buddy Kwok, and also Kyle Brewer, Kile Brewer, also a great photographer. So
Mm.
it was so great because, like, I think in order to be a better teacher or educator, you got to also know what it feels like from the student's perspective.
Yes.
And so my teaching philosophy has been very simple. You remember what it was like being a student and what you hated? Just do the opposite of that. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, yo, I hate it when they do that. And so, like, so this is just be like my big takeaway points is that, like, I enjoyed it the most when the photographers would actually go out and shoot. So Constantine Manos, this guy's a G. I love this guy to death.
Yeah.
He actually went out and shot with us, and he gave a live demo. It's like, he's like, okay, I'm gonna teach you how to shoot layers. And he got all the students like, all right, you stand back there. One of you hold a juggling ball, we're gonna throw shit in the air. And he kind of made it fun and active, right? But the thing that kind of like made me like a little bit like kind of sad as a student, I'm like, yo, I want to hang out with the photographers. I want to like shoot with them and stuff like that. But like essentially the format was you show up, you give feedback on your pictures, and they're like, all right, go off, and I'm gonna see you tomorrow. I'm like, yo, like, I would like to spend more time with, like, you as a person and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so that kind of gave me a good lesson when I'm teaching my workshops. It needs to be personal because I'm there not to just learn from the wisdom. I want to like, I want to hang out with them. I want to like ask them like more personal questions, stuff like that. So like even when I'm doing workshops, just like real life workshops, you know, I try to make it as personal as possible. I eat dinner with the students. I hang out. I'm like, yo, you ask me any question, I'll
That's
tell you honestly
great.
and stuff like that. And so the whole Magnum experience, it was obviously fantastic because I was able to get some sort of like vindication that I was a great photographer. Because like
Right.
my story is, I essentially I did my suits project and I got accepted into the workshop because they thought my portfolio was strong. David Allen Harvey's looking through my pictures. He looks at this one picture that I shot in Michigan of like a bored couple and like kind of like interesting background with the flash. And then David Allen Harvey is like, looks at it, he's like, that's a great photo. I'm like, yes,
Wow.
Magnum photographers told me I'm great. Cool, I could retire on my laurels now, right?
Exactly.
So like, it's just kind of like, it was good for my ego at least in the sense that like I always thought I was a good photographer, but now that like I had a great telling me it, and that was
Yeah.
also cool too because like he just gave some practical tips. Like even David Allen Harvey's best lesson I learned, like he's showing his contact sheets, and this is why I'm a big fan of sharing contact sheets. There's one of his famous pictures. He shot fucking 300 photos of it digitally.
Jesus.
So I was like, yo, like, and he's just like, the gist was like the difference between, a mediocre photographer and a great photographer is a great photographer will take 1,000 pictures of the same thing to get the perfect image. The other
Hmm.
one will just take one or two and run away. So like that actually kind of stuck with me. Constantine Manos, I mean, contemporary of Henri Cartier-Bresson. This guy's a G2. And a lot of things he told me that, just was quite wise. And it's just kind of nice to feel like, to be next to these living legends who actually had contact with Henri Cartier-Bresson. But for
Yeah.
me, the best experience was like, we woke up at like 5 a.m. in the morning. Me and the other students would shoot the sunrise, hanging out, having coffee. And so like, I mean, it's so cliche when people say this is that it's not about the content, but it's more about like the sense of community that you build or the personality that you have. And so
Mm.
actually my encouragement for like everybody is, when you're teaching or doing anything, don't worry so much about the content or the substance of what you're talking about, whether it's right or wrong. You just try to make it personal. So like even when I'm doing my online workshop, I'm asking asking the students their personal questions, and I'm trying to engage with them as much as possible. And essentially to teach others how you would like to be taught, I suppose, is the lesson.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I've always considered attending workshops, but they were just too expensive to get into. And there was one workshop recently by Alex Soth, who's a
Yeah.
documentary photographer at Magnum, and that one I just recently got, and I'm looking forward to delving into. But I think it's good to it's it's good to know that there's some value in there, that people are invested in. Because I've even
How much was the Alex Soth workshop?
that was $99.
Was it online?
It's online, yeah, on
Or
Magnum's.
what's the format?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't really looked at it yet. But
Hmm.
it's basically video format. He sits down and shares a lot of the way he makes photographs, the way he makes narrative documentary work, and he takes you like behind the scenes on how he
Oh,
goes
that's
about,
cool.
doing the work he does.
Hmm.
So that really interested me. But Magnum content isn't really accessible to a lot of folks. Um, so you talked about Haptic Industries. I want you to elaborate a little bit more on that and what that is, how that came about.
Hmm.
Uh,
So, okay, so do you know what the word haptic?
I mean, I actually didn't even know what it meant until you mentioned that it was like the sense of touch.
Do you have the haptic feedback on your phone?
No, but now I remember where that comes from. Yeah.
Wait, what phone do you have?
iPhone 7 Plus.
Okay, if you push and hold the screen, does it do the buzzing?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so it has haptic touch
Right,
or
right, right.
haptic feedback. So
Gotcha.
the word haptic means some sort of sensation of touch.
Mm,
So, for example, let's say I'm trying to hit on you, right?
right.
What would be more effective, me telling you nice things or me stroking your beard?
Stroking the beard.
Because like
Right. There's a sense
humans,
of
like
touch.
we like touch, right? Is that
Right.
like, you know, like even when I'm showing people stuff, right? Like I like to squeeze, like even when I'm doing my selfie videos, I like squeeze my app. Cause like this is actually another interesting thing. This is like a epiphany I realized. When you're showing people a video or some sort of content,
Hmm.
to actually engage in some sort of physical action is kind of interesting. And I think that's why people like to watch porn because the fucking that thing is happening, right? And so for me, um, the 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 notion of happy came from Cindy, and she wanted to create printed versions of whatever I did. Like Street Notes was our OG product,
Right.
and also like together as like a dance, like because Cindy is essentially the CEO of the company. She's the boss person, and I was essentially the marketer of it. It was kind of interesting because part of it is almost I don't know if this is the right analogy, but like a Russian dollhouse analogy, or maybe like another branch is that like
Uh-huh.
Eric Kim is the root, the foundation,
Yeah.
and Cindy was able to create another big branch or a shoot that kind of came off of like my name, my personal brand,
That's great.
and so as a consequence, we started creating products like camera straps, the Henri strap, which I consider like the most OG camera strap, the Eric Kim line,
Mm,
and essentially it's like trying to create what we wish we could see manifested in the real world. And it was so great because I think Cindy has great design sense and she's also like really good at like logistics. I've always wanted to create physical products, but I never had the ability to do so. And so
yeah.
Cindy ended up becoming like my turbocharger where, you know, haptic, let's say the engine is Eric Kim and then haptic becomes like the turbo,
Hmm.
where it kind of like it took all my innate abilities and actually augmented it to the next level.
That's great. That's great. So you guys making physical versions of the PDF files you're creating, or
Yeah. So like Street Notes was like kind of based off a lot of the stuff on the internet that I produced on
yeah.
street photography tips and advice. And it was kind of like you could give someone an ebook for their birthday, but to actually give them a physical book, like it takes it
Yes.
back to the physicality of things. Is that like, you know, I don't know, like I don't care what you say, but humans like touch.
Yeah.
even for me, one of my theories, like I like getting massages. The reason I like getting massages is just like having another human touch you. It feels
Yeah.
good. And or even for humans to hold stuff in their hands, it's quite effective. So even like with I think the reason why people like film cameras, they like how haptic it is, right? Like the Mamiya, right? Like
Yeah, that's
you
true.
cock it, you feel that motion. Like people like the motion. Even like if you're gambling at the casino, I think most people actually prefer to do the crank for the slot machine than to
Yeah.
just push a touch screen thing. But at least even the buttons, there's some sort of haptic feedback on it. And this is why I
Right.
still prefer to type on a keyboard than a touch screen, because the haptic feedback I think kind of wakes us up.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Let me start wrapping up here.
Yep.
So I'm wondering how you got to realize that photography was the thing that you wanted to build around and not
Mm.
something else early on. How did you get to a point where you figured out
Okay.
that,
Very, very good question.
yeah,
So this is truth. I never thought I actually could make a living from photography.
hmm,
I thought it was just like, a fairy tale. Cause like, I wasn't fooled. Like my personal background, like UCLA studied sociology, and I actually wanted to be a sociology professor because I liked teaching and stuff like that. But then the thought about spending another 10 years in school didn't appeal to me. So I'm like, nah, screw that. Also, shout out to Cindy. She forwarded me emails like, oh, do you want to make social media and Facebook your career? I'm like, cool. Signed up for the internship, got a job there. So actually, my strategy when I started off was kind of like a barbell strategy, as Nassim Taleb calls it. Is I had a super secure job working like a 9 to 5 tech job, making $40,000 a year,
yeah.
and on the side, and this is my strategy, and I encourage this to everybody, especially during COVID.
Hmm.
Do the minimum amount of work at job, not to get fired, and then work up your side business. And like people are like, how dare you
Sage
give that advice?
advice.
I'm like, yo, that's like, I'm like, if you don't do that, you're stupid. Like, I'll get a true story. I really wanted to get a raise. I'm like making $40,000 a year out of college. I'm like, all right, that's cool, but I want to make more money. So I'm like, I want to make $50,000 a year, right? But I fucking like started showing up early to the office, leaving late, and then finally my annual review comes up, right? Guess how
Yeah.
much my raise was?
What?
So I went making $40,000 a year to making $41,000 a year.
Jesus.
And I did the math. I was like, this is some fucking bullshit. Like, I'm like,
Absolutely.
no, fuck this corporate shit. I'm fucking outsy, right? So start to, kind of fuck with the system, right? It's like show up as late to work as possible. Like, 10:30, 10:40. Try to leave the office as quickly as possible. It's like,
Yeah.
like 6:15, 6:30 ish. And then also like, during my lunch breaks, I would just go out and shoot photos. And, even when I'm doing market research for social media, my job,
Yeah.
like I'm actually on Twitter, I'm like blogging and stuff like that. So I'm like, like truth be told, like, if you're not, if you are a slave to your job, you're stupid. Like, what you gotta do is you gotta milk the system, milk your employer or whatever. And I have zero qualms about that. Unless you're a small business owner, I don't recommend that. But if you're
Right.
working for a big tech company or for Amazon, Apple, whatever, I'm like, if you're not building up your side hustle while you're employed, making your cushion income, and you're
Yeah.
not planning to actually become self-employed by yourself, I think you're a sucker. It's just my thought.
That's a good point. I mean, I think everything has to be leveraged in your favor,
Hmm.
because I think when you're in a position of being an employee and in a corporation, you're so dispensable. So if we get rid of you and you don't show up, we'll replace you with the next person and the next person
Okay.
and the next
This is
person.
this sage advice too. Okay.
Yeah.
I felt so bad about exiting planning my exit strategy. And actually, this is what happened to me. I was plotting my escape for like a few months, right? But I felt bad about. I'm like, oh, when I put in my notice, I'm gonna feel so bad because this is a risk on me, blah blah. Right?
Yeah.
Our company goes public, stock goes like this. The next day it goes like this.
Ouch.
Half the company gets laid off. I lost my job. My boss lost his job. I'm like, yo, a corporation doesn't give a fuck about you. They don't give a
Yep.
shit.
Right.
And it's not like no one's evil. It's just that's how a corporation works. You gotta cut the bottom line. So I was actually lucky. I became, an entrepreneur in that sense that like the decision was made for me. So I
Yeah.
actually consider getting laid off one of the best blessings of my life. Because I don't think actually I would have had the balls to actually quit on my own
Yeah.
volition.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had like no money in savings, but the time I got laid off, maybe my severance package, I might have been given like, $4,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, it's either fucking all or nothing. I'm just gonna try to do this street photography thing,
Yeah.
teach workshops, and a decade after, I'm still here.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I think that's what this COVID crisis has really uh, put in put it into perspective. People are either going to face it or they're going to feel like their back is against the wall and they can't,
Yo, I'm
do
like, okay,
anything.
if I was still working in my tech company in COVID, I'm like, this is the fucking best thing ever. I'm like, I could just go, like, I don't have to show up to the office. I could goof off. I could do wherever the fuck I want.
Right.
I could work even, and because some people, they do the stupid thing. They're working more now. And I'm like, yo, you guys are stupid. Yo, you, like what? Like no, you gotta milk the employer. And then I think most people, they're too caught up on the morality side of things, or they
Right.
want to, or their goal is not to be an entrepreneur. So I'm like, yo, that's cool. Like if you want to be a corporate slave for the rest of your life, like no bad feelings, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no. I think everyone has their lane. So not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Gary Vee always says that.
Are some lanes more legitimate than other lanes?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's what one feels comfortable with. There's a lot of people that work day jobs that feel happy doing that. But to people like us, it's like, we're literally going into a place where we're giving our souls away. So,
Yo, okay, this is what I'd say, Stephen. If you could, put people into two categories, is this:
yeah.
You're either a Jedi Knight or you're a fucking stormtrooper.
Yeah.
If you want to be a motherfucking clone stormtrooper and just follow orders for your rest of life, like be my guest, right?
Right.
But like I don't know, and I think this is one thing I discovered too. I mean, obviously, like each their own, and all of these are just my opinions, and I don't believe in ultimate truth. It's all subjective, right? But certainly, you either desire to have freedom in your life or not. You care to be a believer. And then I was thinking about this honestly too. I'm like, yo, even if let's say Google or Apple could offer me like $500,000 a year working for them, but I couldn't control whether I want to take a nap or not, it's not worth it. Even if they offered me like, $1 billion a year, but I had to put in like 300-hour work weeks, I would say no. I'm like, yo, like I like to have freedom over my life. And so the big epiphany that I had about entrepreneurship, it ain't even about making a bunch of money or richness. It's essentially having freedom over your life. Because like, and this is also the thing too, just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you're free. Because if you're checking your email like 50 times a day and you're self-employed, you ain't free either. Like I did this experiment when I was living in Vietnam for about like 2 years. I didn't check my email or use email for about 2 years, and I got rid of my phone.
Wow.
And it was probably the best thing I did in my life, because that's when I realized, I could be free. And now like you happen to email me at the right time, because like so now I'm like, yo, like I feel like I've been able to like zen zone out, and I check my email like maybe like once every 6 months.
Wow.
And yeah, so it seems like freedom is the goal. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If you don't got freedom, you got nada.
I want to let you get back to what you're doing. I know we're super over, but one advice for artists and creative people, photographers and different people like that. What simple advice could you give to folks who are in those spaces, in the creative space, and feeling like they're stuck or they can't start, or just any advice?
All right, I'll give you some advice. First advice: subscribe to Stephen Obi-Wan Kenobi's podcast. That's the first one. All right, the second one. Okay. This is what I discovered. The thing actually holding back artists and creators is actually morality and ethics. So, like my favorite philosopher probably of all time is my best friend Friedrich Nietzsche, and he's got a lot of good books on this. Like some of my favorite ones are like Will to Power, Antichrist, Genealogy of Morals, and so forth. And this is what I discovered. Artists want to be considered good by their peers. And therefore, they're incentivized to create what they consider good artwork. And now, certainly art is all subjective. There's no good or bad art, in my opinion. But how does one ascertain, if one is still stuck in this like mentality that one's artwork is either good or bad, how does one orient their lives? There's this thing called social media and money, where I could quantify
Mm.
my self-worth, through my views or through my followers or through how much money I'm making. But I think the ultimate artist is a child, like the 2, 3-year-old version of you, where you would just get a box of crayons and you would just scribble wherever you want, and you would just do it over and over and over again. And like I remember myself, like I'm on my Fisher Price little table, and I had crayons on my scribbling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care to show my whatever I drew to my mom. I didn't care. Like, I didn't care. No one give me a pat on the back. I just did it because it was fun. It was interesting to me. Like, you don't got to pay a kid, or you don't got to motivate a kid to play on the jungle gym, right? But
Right.
somewhere along, in life, society kind of fucks you up, where your self-esteem is dependent on the peer assessment of others. And this is where I think that, and I truly do believe this, entrepreneurship ain't for everybody. But if one individual seeks to have the happiest, most productive, joyful existence,
Mm.
one must become an entrepreneur, or the other one is one must not be employed by somebody else.
Right.
So the simple thing is, if you're getting a paycheck, you're getting free. You could be making $1 billion a year and you could still not be free. And also, my thought too is, you could, even if you are the CEO of a public company, you ain't free. Like, even like someone I admire, Elon Musk, right? I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he's free, because Tesla is a publicly traded stock. It's not a private enterprise unless it went back privatized again. Like, he's not free. Jeff Bezos ain't free. And so for me now, I could classify all humans as free or not free. And so this is why I think entrepreneurship is the goal and the secret to the maximal happiness in life.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, couldn't have said it better. Eric, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, man. I look forward to hearing more from you. Hopefully we can